Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Please call the roll.
Councilmember Cousins?
Here.
Councilmember Fisher? Yes. Councilmember Knight? Here. Councilmember Michelle?
Present.
Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Mayor Keough?
Here. Thank you. Next up on our agenda this evening is a discussion and a potential appointment of a new council person to fill a seat that was vacated by Ray Tell, who had a term ending November 2020. And I have a recommendation that's been included in the packet that was prepared last week. I'd like to review the process that we went through, or that I went through, and help with the staff and all of the applicants to make that recommendation. Ray notified us on October 8th that he was not going to be able to continue as a village council person due to a new job opportunity they had that he conflicted with the meeting dates, and that his last council meeting would be October 22nd, 2018. So we recognized Ray's last meeting, at our last meeting on October 22nd, presented him with a proclamation and thanked him for his many years of service in a variety of roles. The City of Dexter has a process or a council rule for filling a vacancy on council. It's an 8-step procedure. And since the public is here and present without packets, I just want to read. It says, when an elected position becomes vacant for any reason, the position shall be filled within 60 days unless the term expiration date is within 90 days of the day of the day the office is vacated. In the case, the position will remain open until an election. So we didn't have time to do an election prior to what just took place last week. If the vacancy occurs in the office of the mayor pro tem will serve as the mayor until the council appoints a replacement. The appointment to fill the position shall proceed as follows. We have to officially vacate the council member position, which we did when we thanked Ray on the 22nd. We need to provide adequate notification to the public regarding the open position through the city newsletter, the newspaper, the internet, or any other means deemed appropriate. The applicants are invited to write a letter of intent to take the role or fill that vacancy. And then it's my job as mayor to bring all of the applicants to the council via the council packet and share their letters of intent and then make a nomination. Once the nomination is presented, council will vote on the name, and if 4 of the 6 of us vote in favor, then that person fills the vacancy, and we will do a swearing-in ceremony here shortly. So just to provide a little more detail on those steps, the first step, as I mentioned, when we accepted his resignation on the 22nd, that officially vacated the position. We provided adequate notification to the public via City Manager Nichols creating a notice of acceptance of applications, which is attached here in the packet. The notice was first posted to the city website, email service, and Facebook on October 12th. The notice contained the expected qualifications and necessary directions to submit a letter of intent. The notice was posted in the Sun-Times on October 17th and October 24th. The notice was again posted on the city email list service and Facebook site on October 26th. The notice indicated a deadline for applicants to submit their letter of intent by 5 p.m. on Friday, November 2nd. I'm pleased to announce that we received 13 letters of intent, a very tremendous level of interest in serving on the city council. Leading up until about noon on Friday the 2nd, there were 6. And between, I think, 3:30 and 4:15 or thereabouts, we received another 6 or 7. And anyway, a tremendous showing of interest. And I want to personally thank each and every resident that took the time and energy to submit a letter and to sit with me for an hour or more to discuss their qualifications, their experience, what they knew about the council role, and that type of thing. There's certainly people I did not know, some of the people I did know, but I was able to meet with each one of them for at least an hour, or some a little more. I had to interview one person on the phone, which was a little less than an hour, but he had left the state immediately after submitting his letter of intent, so that was the only way I could talk to that person. But the interviews were informal in nature, conducted in public places, right in our restaurants, coffee shops here in the city. And they provided me an opportunity to get to know people that I didn't know and to understand their level of passion for serving. I was able to accomplish the following at pretty much each interview. One, verify that the applicant understood and could commit to the time commitment that was necessary and understood the role of being a city council member. I was able to learn about each applicant's background and experience, to learn about their familiarity with our government, our meetings, our goals and objectives. I was able to answer any questions they had on the process or the city in general. I invited and listened to their ideas and their thoughts. And I thank every one of them for that time. I was also able to judge their energy and enthusiasm, which was pretty high in most cases for all of them. So that's a summary of what we've done since October 8th. The 13 people submitted and were interviewed. And step 4 in the process is for me to make a formal nomination. And as I indicated in the packet, I am hereby recommending and nominating Scott Bell to fill the vacancy on City Council for the term ending November 2020. I'd like to allow Council, first of all, I'd like to thank Council for allowing me to go through this. I tried to keep all of you informed throughout the process as we received applications. They all went to Courtney first, and she got them over to me as soon as she saw them. I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to see the letters of intent or the resumes or whatever that was provided in case you saw those people or knew those people or wanted to contact those people, I suppose. That was not precluded in any way, shape, or form. But I did my best to finish the process in a timely manner and in a thorough manner, and I'm asking for your support this evening with my nomination for Scott Bell. Mr. Cousins.
This is the first time we've done this for a while, and we have a new charter since we did it the last time. And I certainly understand this kind of blends in what the charter says and what we have for rules. And with saying that, I felt, I guess maybe an overwhelming responsibility that I couldn't really follow through with. And that was that on a normal election, according to our recent ballots and our number of people voting, there's between 600 and 900 people will vote for one person for council. And most times those people give us information about themselves. They give some information either through their brochures or face-to-face, or here in a council meeting and talk to them. That didn't happen this time, and so I felt like I had a little bit of lack of information, and I certainly couldn't go around to 13 people and talk to each one of them. So in the future, I would hope that we think about how the process works here, that maybe the council could have a little bit more insight into the applicants, and I certainly was impressed with the whole applicant. I mean, I look at this, I kidded Sean today, and I've kidded a few other council members that looking at some of these applicants here, I wonder why we're here and you're not, okay? But the fact is that I just felt that I didn't have quite as much information that I should have had. And I did know a few of those people. And I called the person today that you have nominated and indicated that even what I was going to say here this evening had nothing at all to do with him. I think he's going to be an excellent candidate, and I would support him this evening. So unless anybody else has something to say, I would make the motion for Mr. Bell to be the new council person for the city of Dexter for the next term, 2 years, I believe it is, till 2020, correct?
Yep, I'll second.
Okay. We'll do it that way. Motion by Cousins, second by Fisher. Anybody on the left side have a comment to make at all?
I just have a comment I'd like to make. I was pleased to see that there was 3 women that applied, so I think that's good, especially since women are stepping up to politics today, and that's great. Yeah, I don't know any of the candidates at all, so I think Mr. Bell will probably do a fine job.
I just want to say I appreciate you sharing them as you receive the candidates instead of waiting till the end.
I appreciate you spending time on this process and think it was a good one. It made me feel like I wanted to know these people. And the upside, the downside is we get to pick one. The upside is that we now have a battery of candidates for all kinds of committees and commission work. We know what they're about, we know that they're interested. They're people that we met, and now we can involve them. So that I thought was a really good part of how we do things. Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome. Thank you for those comments. Okay, Ms. Jones, if you would please call the vote.
Michelle's,
Yes.
Knight,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Cousins.
Yes.
Keel.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to welcome Scott Bell up. Scott's here in attendance. Are there any other applicants in the audience I'm not seeing that I wanted to thank and recognize publicly? Cole, there's Cole out back. Thank you. Cole applied, and we had a good talk too. So thank you for coming and being here this evening. Scott, if you'd come up, and Justin, I think you're prepared to swear him in. Is that true?
I sure am.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to read a little bit, and if you agree, say I do. If not, go sit down. I'm going to face the audience. All right. Raise your right hand. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this state, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Dexter City Council member in and for the City of Dexter, County of Washtenaw, and State of Michigan, according to the best of my ability.
I do.
Congratulations.
It's the best I can do in a short period of time.
I think I have a real employee back.
Scott was on our planning commission, so we have a name tag, which is good. Here's Scott, congratulations, thank you.
Oh, not Paul's taking
There's, Okay, so item C on our agenda is approval of the meeting minutes. There are 2 sets of minutes, one from the regular city council meeting on October 22nd, and the second is a city council work session on the same date, October 22nd.
I'll move both sets of minutes.
Moved by Smith, thank you. Second by Knight, thank you. Mr. Smith, any comments on the meeting minutes?
I do not.
Ms. Knight? Anyone on council have comments on the meeting minutes? Scott, you had a chance to review the minutes online or the
Thoroughly.
Okay, seeing no comments on the meeting minutes, all those in favor of approving both sets of minutes signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Item D tonight is prearranged participation. We have Avalon Housing and Faith in Action here tonight regarding potential housing development at 7651 Dan Hoy, which is more commonly known as the area where we have our community garden. Welcome.
Hi,
Hi, Nancy.
I'm Nancy Paul. I'm the Executive Director at Faith in Action. I know pretty much everybody at this table. And have had some dealings with the city about this property prior to tonight. Faith in Action has been, active in this community since the 1980s. We've had a presence, a physical presence in a site here in town since 2008. We have kind of worked hard to support, the low-income people in both Chelsea and in Dexter. And 15 years ago, when I took over this job, it was really obvious within the first few months that one of the main issues we were dealing with then, as now, is a lack of affordable housing in our communities. We have kind of surveyed and polled our people over the years to kind of check into, the real status of, the real nuts and bolts of how people are getting by in our communities. And we've seen over the years just a steady erosion of people's ability to maintain their income versus their housing expenses in both Chelsea and in Dexter. We know this is not a problem that's specific just to Chelsea and in Dexter, it's really the whole county. But we also recognize in looking around that lots of municipalities have tried to do their part to try to create affordable housing within their borders. When we recognized this problem from the very beginning, we really understood that Faith in Action itself was never going to be a creator of affordable housing. We were in way over our heads. We're really kind of the nuts and bolts of what it takes to support families. But we've had a relationship with Avalon Housing certainly for, as long as I've had this job. Just been kind of looking out and trying to be some eyes and ears on the ground in our communities to identify potential properties that might be suitable for this kind of a project. And, patience comes to those who, what do they say, the rewards come to those who wait, but it really has been a waiting game and a watching game. And in the city of Chelsea, we were able to identify a property several years back now that was, kindly called a almost fully depreciated property in which the owner was ready to make a transfer of ownership. And we brought Avalon to the table at that point, and long story short, we were able to get a project going. We were able to kind of arrange a property transfer, and Avalon was able to bring a project to fruition in which we have 17 new units of affordable housing inside the city limits of Chelsea. We consider this a big success. We identified the property on Dan Hoey as being potentially available and came before this council in January of 2015 to see really what, to get kind of on the record as having a desire to look with and have the city, work with Avalon to develop a project there. So we're kind of at that table again, looking at that. Avalon is with us tonight, and just wanted to kind of set the stage for where we're at on that. I guess you guys can probably say a whole lot more about it, but this is kind of a little meeting of introduction and to kind of get some more facts and plans out on the table. Wendy Carty-Saxon is going to come. She's the Director of Real Estate Development for Avalon, and she's going to present next.
Hi, thanks so much for having us here tonight. I'm Wendy Carter-Saxon with Avalon Housing, and we also have Aubrey Patino, Avalon's Executive Director, and Larry Catron, our Associate Director.
Welcome.
And Teresa Gelati, who's with Washington County Office of Community and Economic Development. So we really appreciate the opportunity to be able to come here and talk about the possible development of affordable housing at 7651 Dan Hoey. And we wanted to give a brief background on Avalon Housing and our experience with affordable and supportive housing, and our thoughts on how affordable housing might be able to be developed at that site more specifically. In the packet, I gave sort of a brief kind of PDF of it. I'm not going to go through exactly slide by slide, but general follow that idea. So as a brief background on Avalon, we started, and you can ask questions whenever you want.
Okay.
We started in 1992. The staff working at the emergency shelter for the county in Ann Arbor were watching people who were in the shelter would go off and find housing, but then would be back at the shelter homeless again without housing. And they were trying to look for what's the solution. And they, who later became Avalon's initial staff, along with other folks across the country, were coming up with supportive housing by other names. But really, three main things: housing with units and rents that people could afford, a property manager that'll work with somebody and not just evict them immediately, and a service team, which is really that critical piece that will focus the services on helping folks maintain their housing on that. So now, this many years later, Avalon does all those three things. We we develop our own properties, we acquire and we have them oversee it. We self-manage everything that we own, and we also provide services at our sites, and also we provide supportive housing services to supportive housing, the Ann Arbor Housing Commission, some units with the IPSI Housing Commission, and other units with private landlords in the community. And sometimes we've entered into partnerships with others for service provision, like Faith in Action out of the site out in Chelsea, are providing our services to folks. So now we have 24 properties, 288 units. So you can, all rental, so fairly scattered site model that averages about 12 units, right, per property. We range from duplexes to a 40-unit property. And if you include the folks that we serve, but the properties we don't own, it's about 750 people and 200 kids, including 200 kids. So both single adults as well as families. And we're housing first. So we view housing more as a basic human right, not as a reward for clinical success. So once a person has their housing, then they can actually work on other aspects of their lives. Get their health back together, get their education, both for the adults in the household as well as a stable education for the kids. Stabilizing, increasing income, employment, all of those things, connecting with a positive social network. Really just needing to know where you're going to sleep at night in order to be able to seriously address all those other issues in life. In the packet are sort of a few pictures of types of Babylon's existing housing, our general housing stock, and then some before and after shots. We have a couple new construction projects that we've done, Pauline Apartments and Carrot Way Apartments, both in Ann Arbor. And I'll note y'all are stuck, except for the Chelsea properties that I have been in Ann Arbor, but we've really been looking more broadly throughout the town, and more broadly. So both of those are family developments, Pauline and Carrot Way, townhouse units, and how we would sort of envision the Dan Hoey property. Townhouses, we understand there's a big need in general for affordable housing, in particular a high family need. And at the place in Chelsea, it was an existing property, so it was 1 and 2 bedrooms, and we were kind of limited by that. So with new construction, it really opens things up in a nice way. There's also some pictures of Sharon Ann, or now 533 North Main, the property in Chelsea that we rehabbed. And it's an exterior, so you can definitely see some changes, though some of the beauty of it was really on the interior, like shifting the community room or changing the laundry into a real nice community. And community is a big part of what we do and what we try to create at our properties. So yeah, Dan Hoey, we picture it similar to that physical townhouse or up-down flat design. When we look at developing a property, we start with who we're looking to house and what their incomes would be. And there's a chart in there sort of with what affordable rents might be. So affordable rents are considered 30% of a person's income. That's considered an affordable rent for them. So it looks at sort of what affordable incomes are for different income levels, and then what fair market rents, what you're likely to see in Washington County. So there's, like if somebody's just getting a government income, supplemental security income, or disability income, that's about $9,000 a year. So an affordable rent for them would be $225 a month. You're not going to find that, right? Fair market for efficiencies of 1 bedrooms are around $900 a month. So you've got a big gap. Somebody's making minimum wage, $9.25 an hour, full time. Their affordable rent is $481 a month. So it's better, but you still have this big gap between that and what you're going to find in the market. The chart kind of also goes into what is considered the area median income, half below, half above. And that for a 4-person household, it's like $92,000. Affordable housing for under the tax credit program, which is the major funding source for anything that besides affordable housing, says it's affordable basically if it's under 60, somebody's under 60% of that median. So for a 4-person household, it would be about $55,000 a year. So for affordable housing, strictly speaking, going into the program, someone could set their rents, it's about $1,400 a month, just under, at that limit. But we need to step back, right, and see what are the incomes of the people we're looking to serve. And I'm suspecting it's not $55,000, and it's less than that. So that's where we start. Who are we trying to serve? What is realistically 30% of their income? So what kind of rents would we want to start with to target? So the whole point of the exercise is that we're able to house the folks that we're looking to house. With this particular under the tax credit program, which I'll go into a little bit more. Very broad brush, though, the way the scoring kind of works now and the way we look at, or thinking of envisioning it, is that maybe half the units would be more deeply targeted supportive housing, where folks have been homeless, highest needs. Washtenaw County has a centralized list of folks who are homeless in the community, and they contact Hawk Housing Access of Washtenaw County. They contact the list and then are evaluated and who's got the highest needs. The folks that do, when they're open in these CAG supportive housing units, are able to move into those units that are open. And those units, when we would develop it here, would be able to have a voucher. So the tenant might pay the $225 a month if that was their only income, that $9,000, and the voucher provider would pay less. So that would be the affordability for those units. And the other half of the units would be folks that are just general income need, don't have any, necessary other need. And those would be the ones that we really have to dig down and figure out how to set the rents in a way that would work if we weren't able to get vouchers. I'd say since about 2014, Avalon has really been focusing and working with the county on this Built for Zero initiative, really working to try to end veterans and chronic homelessness in the county, and it really made great strides in doing that. So in doing that, all our vacancies and new units pretty much have been being filled from that centralized list. But when Avalon started, we were more structured with this mix of both supportive housing and more traditional kind of affordable housing. And our Sharon Ann, our 533 North Main development, also has that mix of the subset, supportive, and the other affordable. And again, that's how we look at continuing that here at Tantoli. There's some funding sources listed in that. Bunches, this kind of development generally takes multiple funding sources. And everything on that list are funding sources we've worked with multiple times before, like the housing tax credit, county home dollars, federal home loan bank, and the developments, the Pauline, Carrot Way, and 533 North Main and Chelsea are all ones we've used those funding sources before. Out of those, low-income housing tax credits is really the biggest one. That probably funds 80 to 85% of the total development costs. So it's kind of the biggest one in the room, just real roughly. It works in that an investor basically, instead of having to pay taxes on all their money or on whatever they made, can instead give that money to affordable housing essentially and get a break from doing that. And we as the provider get money that comes into the project that we don't need to pay back. So it's a huge benefit for affordable housing unless we don't meet any commitments, obviously. But, so that's helpful. And the state, Michigan State Housing Development Authority, reviews all the applications for that money, for the low-income housing tax credit, decides on the award, oversees the awards, and does compliance oversight and follow-up, including reporting and regulatory agreement holding whoever gets the award to these commitments over the long term, so who they're going to house. Tax credits are pretty highly competitive. Maybe a quarter or so of the applications get funded in any given round. It's a long-term commitment too. Usually folks, we commit to a good 45 years. It's a 15-year period, and then there are incentives to increase that to 30 or 45. We have developments in the city of Ann Arbor where we've agreed to even longer terms than that. We're in it to stay in it and to keep affordable housing as affordable housing in the community. And there are sometimes when you might have an investor and they leave, and we always structure it up front so the nonprofit maintains ownership. With tax credits, the competition is really based on scoring, and there are a bunch of scoring criteria that you're judged on and evaluated against each other. Some is, there's a category for supportive housing specifically. Again, housing is hardest to house most vulnerable populations. One of the new changes sort of really helps agencies that have done it a while and targeted folks well and have had success. So we're feeling more competitive in that category than we were a few years ago, which is why we kind of were on pause a little bit on some things until we felt there was some efficacy in doing all of this. And one of the pointing is that you serve half the folks who are supportive housing most in need. So that's one of the reasons we're looking to structure it. There are also other scoring criteria that have different locational factors. Like if you're within a half a mile of a single business that has at least 125 year-round employees, you get X number of points. If you're within a mile of a grocery store, pharmacy, doctor's office, etc., you get some points. If you're within a mile radius, there's neighborhood reinvestment of $5 million that has gone on over the past 5 years, or $1 million over planned in the future, you get some points. So just to give you a sense of the kinds of things that the different projects across the state are evaluated based on. And there are also points for site plan and zoning, having those in place, and getting a payment in lieu of taxes if that's something that's possible. So we're still looking to get a sense of how a Dan Foley project might score out on all of these, including those locational factors. But it looks, from what we've done, especially if you can hit a couple of the main ones, that it really would be a very competitive application in the tax credit round. And I'll just note, one of our biggest challenges in developing properties and bringing new affordable housing to fruition is really finding the properties. With these multiple funding sources, they generally have 1 round or 2 rounds per year. So if a property's on the market, someone else in the private market might come off from at asking price and they'll close in a week, right, in a hot market. Or we built the property, we really need to do some environmental tests, and then we need to apply for some funding, and then we need to wait to see if we've been awarded, and then and then we'll tell you if we can absolutely buy it, and then we'll close. So we need very special sellers that either just are, private and are willing to wait for whatever reason, or have other mission-based interests in promoting affordable housing. So that's just a real key thing. Funding is critical too, but that ability of a seller to give us time is key, absolutely key. And then speaking of time, so like for Dan Hoey in particular, looking at funding applications, the county has 1 funding round per year. And since Dexter's now in the urban county, we're able to look to access county home dollars, or home dollars through Washington County, which is a really great resource to be able to do a development like this. Their app is due in January of 2019, which is close. Some ways might be a little close, but the next app is until January of 2020. So that's a nice one to do. For any funding application, site control is always something that they look for too, which is a little tricky. But with tax credits, they have 2 rounds a year. Low-income housing tax credits, April and October. In order to be most competitive, we need site plan and zoning. So we're not expecting April on that, but possibly October in terms of queuing. If that all worked, just to give a general sense of if timelines and everything worked out. If we applied in October, award announcements would be January of 2020. We'd guess closing maybe July 2020. And construction then starting and maybe done and actually having people move in about June of 2021. So we're a long way from that timeline, though there's still a lot of nearer term, hopefully discussions or thoughts to be having to think about any of that. But at the end of the process, obviously, that those are the kinds of development processes, but having hopefully, wonderful units in the community. I think, that's what I wanted to touch on, but we're all happy to answer any questions.
So you said a lot there. I appreciate a lot of that background and stuff. Let me just touch on the timeline, since that was the last thing you touched on a little bit. So from our end, we obviously welcomed you in 2015. I'm glad you're back again. This council has talked about that as a possible site. We haven't taken any action on anything. What formally are you, if we were interested in helping you with this, what formally do you need us to do in the coming weeks, months?
I think the biggest
As you see it.
Yeah. The biggest near-term thing that I would see, if you guys are interested, is if we could be in a position to apply for the county funds in January, because we'd be combining county funds with tax credit funds with maybe another source. That app is due, I think, the week of January 20th or something. But in order to apply, a purchase agreement or site control would be needed. So that would be, I think, the decision part and the timing for that decision. Frankly, it could be possible for us to come in January 2020, but it would be trickier because then we'd be submitting a tax credit application without, before that, so without all of our funding. That's why it's not, it's a little quicker timing, I guess. But that would be the sort of deciding.
Okay. Other questions from council? Zach?
The AMI for Dexter area is much higher than for the county. When you're setting your target, are you going to be using the county or Dexter community?
Generally, it's a countywide, as far as area median, as far as what the rents are restricted on. I know sometimes there are areas where it might adjust a little bit for the county. So with our vouchers, we would probably be looking at what the countywide rate is. But again, with folks that don't have vouchers, if we're looking at setting the rents, we'd be looking to get a sense of what are the incomes of the folks we're trying to house and trying to set the rent so it's affordable to the population of Dexter.
And are you aware that next to the site, there's likely going to be a power substation in the future?
Yes, absolutely. And we've chatted with both our environmental consultant about that and with MISHDA, with the state, to see if they, because we were wondering that. We thought they would say, we don't want to do housing here. But they were both like, yeah, it's fine. Substations aren't like what they used to be. And so neither of these two entities that we talked to had any issue with it. So it's like,
And an item farther down on the agenda is a housing task force. So if you've got anyone you think would be useful for that, be in contact with us. Thank you.
I don't know how to ask this question, but maybe I'll throw it out there. When you had the one in Chelsea, and there was a unit already there, there was a dollar figure that I assume you bought it for. Is there any way that you could describe the percentage of that with what the total cost of what you needed to do as what you think, once again, think this property should be worth, and what you think the total cost would be on, so is it close? Is it way off? I realize one already had a structure on it, one doesn't have anything.
right. Yeah, so we would anticipate certainly more for the structure, right, than vacant land. And then the percentage of total cost of the acquisition with the structure would be more. I will say, with land, it's so tax credits, the way we get equity or dollars amount into the project is essentially based on how much you spend on the project. We'll get money in for that. It's sort of a weird way that it works, except for certain things like land. So whereas at Sharon Ann, we got a certain amount for the building, or they divided what was the building cost, was the land cost.
And the land was valuable as well.
Right, the land was valuable, but we had to find another source to pay for that. So that just goes to say land is sort of even extra valuable for us. But basically we'll pay, we're generally, as long as we can find the sources, able to pay what's, an expected amount. We can't ever go over an appraised amount for anything.
So one of the things that was exciting to me about the potential of that site is a community garden that's already there. Are you excited about it as well? Or do you feel that's a value, or is it a distraction from that?
I think it's a great resource out there, and Avalon has this Edible Avalon program that at all our properties anyway, we have sort of raised garden beds and encourage planting and involvement between the tenants and the community, and planting vegetables and all that. The thing that, and I understand there's been a ton of work put in time in getting the soil right and getting everything right. So we would definitely like to be able to see how that garden could be maintained. The tricky part is it could be a trade-off, because I'm not sure the square footage, it looks like a decent size, so a lot of folks are out there working at having plots. So really trying to figure out, is there a way to have it maybe straddle our area in the DTE site, or is there a way to configure it so it's within where the setback lines might be, or it's a decision maybe for folks, is there in fact a trade-off on, units and the garden area to see what.
So how many total units were you thinking for that site? Exclusive of what the garden would be?
Yeah. For about 2 acres, it looked like the zoning might give about 24 units roughly, sort of on the maximum side. And I'd say with our townhouse developments we've done in Ann Arbor, it's a similar density. That's more 15 units per acre. This is more like a 12 unit per acre.
What are they on the Carrot Way?
About 15 units, but it's 30 units and a little over 2 acres, I think. And I know Howling specifically hit the zoning exactly, which was 15 units per acre.
Thank you.
Scott, Don, anything? What?
No, this is interesting though. He's good.
Jim, Judy?
Question.
The little video that you sent that explained the credit program was really cool.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
That was very good. Thank you for sending that along. Well, if we don't have any more questions for them, Wendy, I'd like to thank you and Nancy for coming. We will talk more about this here, maybe not tonight, but if not tonight, at our next meeting, and maybe it's appropriate to, once we discuss it, maybe have a meeting with them or appoint some people to talk to them or something like that. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you very much, Karen and your team. Okay, we are down to item E, which is approval of the agenda.
I'll move approval of the agenda. I'd like to see item L3 change from a consideration item to a discussion item. And then if that is done, Zach, you asked for the closed session.
Yep, it was to be typewritten with that.
So if we're making that a discussion item, we don't need that?
Yep.
Okay. So then I would like to have the closed session change from potential purchase of property to discussion regarding the tax tribunal case.
Okay, so motion by Smith to approve the agenda with L3 as a discussion item instead of consideration, and have the closed session item be to discuss tax tribunal matters.
That's correct.
Second.
We also need L3, or J3 for the town, the parade,
Oh, thank you, that's on the table here, yes.
Yep.
small town
All
holiday
right.
parade. I had that as J unless anyone has anything to discuss about
No.
it, but I didn't get the question, so.
Yeah, J3 is fine for the parade.
Okay, thank you, Courtney,
Sustained
for remembering
second.
that.
Yeah.
And so the reason why it's part of discussion of the agenda, why I put in both 2 and 3 as consideration is, in my opinion, it was far easier and more fair for everybody if it was consideration and it got changed to discussion instead of the other way around where it was discussion and it became a consideration. So if folks aren't comfortable doing that today, I wanted to start it off with the highest level before it got bumped down.
Fair enough. Okay, everybody understands the motion? The 2 changes to the agenda? Motion by Smith, second by Michelle. Did I have that correctly? Okay. All those in favor of approving the agenda with the following change, or with those changes, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. We have an agenda. We have no public hearings this evening, so we're down to non-arranged participation. There might be at least one person in the audience here today. Welcome, Amy.
Michelle?
Please state your name and address for the record.
I want to start just by saying that before the meeting started, we provided for you an updated litigation table, or revised litigation table, because the table that was in the package that were sent to your homes were incorrect. So I think I saw that passed around earlier. My name is Amy Heibuff, and I am representing the Five Healthy Towns Foundation Board of Directors regarding the property tax litigation at 2800 Baker Road. Recently, the City of Dexter's attorney asked our attorney if we might consider settling. That potential prompted our settlement offer on November 6th and our attendance at tonight's meeting. On behalf of the Five Healthy Towns Board of Directors, this will be the second time we've made a settlement offer. The first time was in November of 2014. At that time, Scioto Township, Dexter's taxing authority, proposed a settlement, which we eventually offered to the then Village of Dexter in a written letter. 2 of the 3 parties at that settlement table agreed to the settlement, Scioto Township and Five Healthy Towns Foundation. and the Village of Dexter did not. The terms of that agreement were laid out in the settlement letter as follows in part. While Chelsea Wellness Foundation, Scioto Township, and the Village of Dexter and its DDA may not agree on the legal positions, we believe that there is agreement and alignment as to the shared goals of all involved, and that is improving the quality of life of community residents by promoting their health and wellness. At the meeting held on October 3rd, 2014, Mr. Murdy calculated $30,000 as the DDA's negative tax capture. For purposes of this proposal, we are using the $30,000 value as the amount of charitable donation in 2014. In order to calculate future years, we look to the DDA's Development Strategic Plan. Based on the DDA's data from the Development Strategic Plan, the DDA is expecting net revenues to offset the $30,000 negative tax capture for 2014 by its 2019 to 2020 fiscal year. Chelsea Wellness Foundation will commit to making the following annual charitable grants to the Dexter DDA so as to offset the negative tax capture. December of 2014, $30,000. December of 15, $24,000. December of 16, $18,000. December of 17, $12,000. And December of 18, $6,000. That was our previous offer. Our current offer is the same as the original offer with the settlement payment for 2014 and 2015 excluded in light of the court's decisions. As we've publicly shared, Five Healthy Towns Foundation's legal bills have been as much as 3 times that of the more than $500,000 of taxpayer money the City of Dexter has spent to date. It is always more expensive to be in the position to prove a position. The table is now turned. The City of Dexter not only has to prove their legal theories, but they have to do so in the face of multiple court decisions against them. We believe it is a good time for the City Council to cut their losses, all of our losses, and preserve any future spending for important community improvement efforts. Here's the Five Healthy Towns Foundation offer. And again, this is in part. Power Wellness Management, LLC, and Chelsea Health and Wellness Foundation both agreed to an appropriate settlement that should be considered to bring an end to the protracted litigation concerning the exempt status of Dexter Wellness Center and any claim of liability or lessee user tax. To that end, the Foundation and Power Wellness Management would agree to settle all pending cases against the Foundation and Power Wellness Management for the amount stated in the Foundation's November 13, 2014 settlement offer, which was accepted by Scioto Township and correspondence dated October 28 of 2014 and November 21 of 2014. Corresponding to tax years 2016, 2017, and 2018. The November 13, 2014 settlement letter had proposed a settlement payment of $18,000 for 2016 tax year, $12,000 for 2017, and $6,000 for 2018 for a total payment of $36,000 for the 3 years in aggregate. Those amounts were calculated based on Dexter's DDA's stated claim that these were the amounts of the negative tax capture. That is the amount that the Foundation Power Wellness Management is willing to pay in exchange for global settlement of all pending matters, which would require Dexter's DDA and the Department of Treasury to enter into a stipulated consent judgment in the Tax Tribunal, Circuit Court, Court of Appeals, and State Tax Commission, stipulating to property tax exemption for Dexter Wellness Center for all tax years at issue, and cancellation, rescission of all lessee user tax assessments under MCL 211.181 against Power Wellness Management. In addition, Dexter would agree to follow State Tax Commission Bulletin 26 of 2017 in determining the exempt status of Dexter Wellness Center in future years. We hope you will thoroughly consider the enclosed offer. Dexter and the DDA face a considerable uphill battle in all pending matters. In the exemption litigation, the Foundation had the burden of proof and the associated expense, and it ultimately prevailed in a unanimous decision by the Court of Appeals, which was upheld by the Michigan Supreme Court. In the pending cases, Dexter and the DDA have the burden of proof and the considerable expense that goes with it. We ask that you consider this offer tonight and respond through your attorney by November 15th of this year.
Thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak this evening?
I'm not the audience, but I'm going to take, I came from Ray's book and ask that you would please identify our young men out here that are here for a reason from our scout.
We got to add that to the council positions.
Yeah,
Boy Scout Badger.
right. Could you please stand and tell us who you are and why you're here?
I'm Larry Castle, the Troop 448 Scoutmaster. We have 3 scouts who are working on their communications merit badge, which is attend a public meeting, take notes, listen carefully, and then they have to prepare a report. Want to introduce yourselves?
I'm Holden Hughes.
I'm Joy Barblow.
I'm Jay Bell.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Anyone else? Kyle? Good evening.
Evening. Just want to say thanks to Sean. Met the other morning and talked about the council seat, and had a good talk. And
Thanks for applying.
I tried to thank everybody earlier, Kyle. If I missed you, I don't know if you walked in.
I kind of came in a little bit.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you very much for your participation and interest.
No problem.
It was a good talk.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks
What's
for
his
coming.
young man?
That's Kyle Marsh.
Okay, thank
Kyle
you.
Marsh.
Kyle Marsh.
Thank you, Kyle Marsh.
You may know Kyle's fine work as the designer of the Hotel Hickman outdoor area. Local architect, lives over on 4th Street.
And we have a current project going right now for Becky Cover on Broad Street.
That's awesome.
Oh,
We just drove
Yeah.
past that today.
We just put the windows in. It looks pretty sharp.
It's awesome.
Lives in the community, working in the community. So thank you, Kyle, for coming tonight.
Okay, see ya.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak this evening? Okay, thank you. We are down to item H, communications. There are 3 in the packet: our upcoming meeting list, our signed calendar, and our award letter from the state for the 2017 water fluoridation. The goal we achieved.
That's basically just them giving us an award for doing what we said in our
Doing what we said we
permit.
did. Hey, at least we're doing it.
Apparently.
Dan, kudos, buddy.
You got a good staff.
Marie's always promoting the
Exactly.
treasurer's report. Government finance awards.
We provide for the city, but it is an award.
Strike one up for the DPW and the water department. No, better to receive these letters than, so.
That's why I'm here.
Thanks for your good work. I'm sorry to make light of that. Does anybody have any comments on the communications? Okay, our first report then tonight is from our Public Services Superintendent. Welcome, Dan.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
I provided a report in your packet. I don't have a lot of updates, but I do have a concern I'd like to bring up with you guys. On page 56 of my report, the 4th bulletin down on the wastewater, a couple weeks ago we noticed we were having a problem with our biogas boiler. It wasn't getting any biogas. Upon investigation of the tank itself, the tank on the secondary digester provides gas for our boiler. And it's a floating tank that goes up and down. It's stuck right now. And there's a little bit of water around the outside of it. We're able to decant to keep that down. Inside the tank, there's rails that guide the lid to go up and down on that digester, depending on how much sludge and how much gas we're making. Initially, we went up and we looked at all of our plumbing and all of our parts up there. We actually sprayed some soapy water on it to make sure that we didn't have a small leak somewhere. We couldn't identify it. Right now, we've got biotech scheduled for the end of November, the 1st of December to come in and haul our sludge, which would empty that tank out. And I think after they empty that tank out, I would like to have them clean that tank, because one of the things we're thinking is maybe some of the grit got over from the primary into there, and it's got the rails kind of gummed up. It's preventing it from going up and down. So we're looking somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 range. They charge $385 an hour. Usually they can get it done in a day and a half. But also, what I'd like to do is I'd like to hire F&B to do a confined space entry after that tank is empty, to go inside and look at all the components in there and make sure that everything's operating properly. And that would probably be another $3,000 to $5,000. I'm gonna get a hard number from F&B this week. That's for around $3,000 to $5,000. To have 2 guys come in, do combined entry in there, and that'll probably take around 2 days to get that completed also.
Do you have a way to vet that while they're doing it at all, from a couple directions?
Yes.
You do, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what we're doing right now.
Don't be doing any welding while you're finished.
Well, the worst case scenario is that tank has a skirt that runs down from the lip that goes down about 15 feet. If there's a hole in the side of that tank, that creates a little bit different problem for us to try to resolve. But as you know, with the wastewater project, the upgrades we're doing with the headworks is to remove that grit that we know we've had a problem with. That's why we're doing that project. So hopefully, best case scenario, something just got in there, we'll clean it out. I think I've talked to you guys a couple times before this project that we were supposed to clean these out this year, but we wanted to wait until after the project was done to do that, but we're not going to be able to do that. And that's it. Go ahead.
Mr. Cousins?
So, how old is this thing?
3?
3 years?
3 years.
Most of 3 years.
Yeah.
Well, theoretically, this shouldn't be happening.
It should not be happening, and we're looking at best case scenario with the grit being in there. I mean, there could be something wrong with the rails and the core bolts. I mean, we won't know until we get in there. The last 2 years prior, we've had a similar problem, but we were able to mix it to create more gas, and it lifted it. We've never had it to where it's starting to put water on top, which this time of the year, if it freezes, can cause a lot of damage. So we're doing everything possible to keep that down. And it's actually pretty good timing with, the sludge haulers getting here. It's not great timing for the wastewater project, but we gotta do what we gotta do. And they understand. Do you have any other questions on my report?
Where'd you get cardboard on Broad Street? You had to do a cardboard cleanup?
It's the dumpster
It's the
corral
dump-
behind Hotel Hickman.
Oh,
They
okay.
pile a lot of cardboard there instead of putting it into the cardboard container.
Oh, okay.
The guys
Makes sense.
cleaned a bunch of it up 3
Thanks.
weeks ago now.
Mr. Smith?
Just a curiosity question. Under the DPW, picked up steel in Mill Creek Park and all that?
We're not really sure where it came from,
Yeah,
but
they
we
picked
recycled
it, they, Trout Unlimited picked it out of the river.
Oh, did they?
So the
Oh, I
Trout
didn't know.
Unlimited came to shock the fish,
Oh, you're
but
right.
something happened and they couldn't, so they spent their time picking it out of the river.
Oh, nice.
And then, yeah, we made like $100 off of it. I'm
It's
just
a razorback.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing with the wastewater project too. We've got a big dumpster down there that's throwing all the steel and the contractor doesn't think it's worth what it would cost them. So we get an extra revenue coming in that way with the project.
Thank you.
How are we doing on leaf pickup?
I think
Seems like we picked up a lot lately.
Yeah, right now it's game on. They're down. And they're out there working every day, as much as we can get done. Obviously, it saves a little bit on manpower for what we used to do, but we still got a lot of leaves we need to take care of our own self, at the parks and different things. I think we had a little help this weekend.
Yeah, the Girl Scouts did a project in Monument Park, that's why half of it's rapes. They had like a ceremony, what do you call it, a vigil for the Girl Scouts that were killed in Wisconsin in the car accident where the person ran off the road during their project. And so their chapters had to find service projects, so they had the vigil and then they did some raking in Monument Park. So that's why
Will you be setting up another place?
yeah, I can do that.
Leaf machine is still working really well?
What's that?
Is the leaf machine still
Well, that's
working?
where I was gonna go. This new leaf machine has made my life a lot easier. These guys love this thing. They will go out in the rain. I mean, it's better in the rain. I mean, compared to what we used to do, yeah, they can add water to it on the dry days. I mean, they're always out there doing it.
I know
it's
Dearborn
so-
Heights was just here looking at it and watching it in action.
Yeah, I actually have met them down there, and I'm like, and they're a lot bigger community
Yeah.
than we are. And they had 2 guys down there from the DPW that had the same setup that we had. And they actually went out, we actually let them operate inside the DPW, and then they went out and washed. And yeah, I think they're gonna have to have one of those. I know the DPW guys, they really thought that was, well, it's just so much more efficient and cleaner, you know?
And they do maintenance on it weekly too, though, just to make sure, because that was one thing we learned from Chelsea, was that if you have to keep up on the maintenance, the greasing, and all of that, because
Just like everything else we
Yeah,
got.
it
And it
has
goes
to-
along with the fluoride, I mean, the preventative maintenance and the testing, and, I mean, everybody's doing a good job.
Good. Other questions on the report from Dan? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work, sir. Next up is our Community Development Manager. Michelle, how are you?
I'm fine, how's council?
Very good.
How's council this evening?
Good.
Very good.
Okay, I'll just talk louder, how's that? I'm glad you're all doing well. You have my report. Congratulations, Scott. I will miss you on city council, I will miss you on planning commission, but from my perspective, it was a win-win for me, so looking forward to working with you on council. You've got my report in front of you. Do you have any questions before I go into the couple of verbal updates that I have? Don't know, probably.
Mr. Smith?
Under 2C,
Mhm.
the pre-app meeting,
Yes.
under the first bullet, talks about podium-type parking under the building. What is that?
So if you think about it like, let's see if I can do this. So this is the front face of the building, and this is another front face of the building. You go underneath the building, so it would sit over
Parking.
the parking. So the parking would be in back. You most likely wouldn't see it except through that driveway opening. It was a rather unique design, and one that I don't think I'm talking out of turn when I say I think everybody on the committee thought that was a really good way of camouflaging the parking behind. So.
It allowed the whole front of the site to be building and green space as opposed to building and parking on one side. The view from the alley would obviously be different from the front. Granted, the prominent view would be.
And I can get you a copy of the schemes so that you can see them.
Thank you.
Okay, so on the updates, Victoria Condos is, they're winding down in their construction. And so they're looking at the wearing course that they need to put on the remaining part of Victoria Drive. But because of the amount of construction that's gone over the entire roadway, we had OHM go out and do an inspection with the developer, and they identified exactly what needs to be done from the two entrances in the right-of-way all the way along. So there's going to be some significant reconstruction of the new part of the road and the new wearing course. There'll be some curb work, not just on the construction area that's been going on for the last 3 years now? Yeah, wow. But also some spot fixes on that part of Victoria that was done way back by Mr. Bonar. So I think it will ultimately work out really nice for both the existing residents as well as the new. But what that does, what that means is that we did have to allow some parking for a short period of time on Carrington and on Lexington. So it's the south side of Carrington and the east side of Lexington, so that people don't get caught either in their driveway or not being able to get back into their That's just temporary. It's just temporary, yeah.
Do the people that live there know?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we required the developer to give a 48-hour notice, which they did last Friday. They thought maybe they'd be starting work today. That didn't happen. It will happen. It will start tomorrow. Good.
Now, is that asphalt work?
Yes, sir.
Is that-
Asphalt and concrete.
Okay. Is asphalt still available?
As far as I know, it's still available.
I didn't know when it typically gets cut off.
Depends.
It depends. I have not heard that it's been cut off yet, so, but any day is pretty much right.
It's usually synonymous with the start of hunting and 15.
Because I was
We got
wondering about,
3 days.
But they got behind, there might be things they're trying to finish up.
because I was wondering about Rainbow too.
They're pretty close to being done with it. I know they've got their concrete.
Yeah, Chris has
Yeah,
been
the
asking
asphalt.
them
But the asphalt,
almost
yeah.
weekly about it, so.
No asphalt there,
Yeah.
So, the long-awaited Cellas had their first soft opening on Friday. And I know I live in Northville, but I took Carrie out home, and even though we had to reheat it by the time I got home, it was really, really good. So I hope as they have other soft openings this week and probably into next week, you'll take the opportunity to go out and check it out. Adrian and his wife Lori are just over the moon that they've been able to open this restaurant. It is the largest one they have. It is a full-service restaurant. None of their other restaurants are this large or full service. They've managed to overcome all of the different obstacles to getting to this point. They recognize that and I told you in an email, the pent-up demand that there is in Dexter. That's the reason for doing a number of soft openings on a limited scale. Get the staff up to date, make sure everybody's moving and working together like a well-oiled machine would, before really opening the doors and having everybody just... They just picked up an award through Current, the Current magazine, Ann Arbor's Current Advertising magazine. They just picked up an award for the most best and expensive food place to eat. Which I thought was pretty nice for us. Well, I hope you'll that's what's coming.
Yep, I hope you'll make it out there. A couple others. The Special Planning Commission meeting went off quite well. I want to thank everybody that was able to make it, and that includes members of council. You participated, and I appreciate that, as does Planning Commission. It certainly helps as we go forward with in finalizing this update. But subsequent to the meeting, there were a couple of concerns raised about the city not expanding, quote unquote, the boundaries. And what I've done is I'm working to clarify that. It's a subtlety that got lost in communication. The city, when Planning Commission and Council had the joint meetings, a series of 3 meetings between Planning Commission and Council, you remember, you decided not to proactively go out and just annex property to expand the boundaries. But you didn't say we are never going to expand our boundaries. You said you'd look at anyone that you'd consider a proposal on a case-by-case basis and see what was being proposed and how that evaluated out, or how it vetted before you'd make a decision saying, yeah, we'll take it in, or no, we won't do it. So a little subtlety, but one that we want to make sure that the communication is accurate going forward.
And where are we on that process now between the adoption of that?
We are still, excuse me, Megan will have the comments and the recommendations from this meeting at the next Planning Commission meeting, and I believe then we go into some implementation, some final implementation issues before we take it to council for distribution, if I remember right. I might be wrong, the interest in Planning Commission that says that, but I do think it's council that says it can be distributed. Once it's distributed, it is a 65-day process for surrounding communities, SEMCOG, Washtenaw County Road Commission, et cetera, to look at it and provide any comments. And then after that period, that comment period is done, Planning Commission holds a public hearing and then makes a recommendation to council, and council is the last adoption.
Could you?
So it's March, somewhere between March and June, I think, before it finalizes.
Could you provide that for us?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okey
okey. We had a pre-app meeting this evening before City Council, and I won't go into all of the different comments. It was well attended. I thank the committee for participating. They had great comments. They had significant concerns, though. Primary is traffic. We're talking about the site at 8180 Main, the former Mill Creek Sports site. The traffic coming through the viaduct, you've got Dexter Chelsea Road there, and it becomes a pitch point at peak times. And so there were concerns about traffic, and there was some direction to talk with the road commission about the possibility of a roundabout in that area. So the developer is going to be investigating that. The other concern was density. It's village commercial zoning, which is 12 units per acre. That calculates out to 19 units for that little 1.5 acre site. But the applicant is proposing 32 units, if I remember right. Thank you, Sean. And that's more density than is permitted. And because of the nature of the site, pun intended with the word, there were concerns that that much density and the product that they're proposing may not be the most appropriate for that site. So the developer's got some work to do, and while we're still finishing up the master plan update, it might be worth more of a conversation with Planning Commission and ultimately Council as to what we'd really like to see there. And may have to look at some different zonings. So there was one question. The developer was pressed about when they said they were going to do a condo development as opposed to a rental. There was a good conversation about what about something that would be more affordable for people, especially even if it was a mixed type of development where one-bedroom rentals were permitted, and then you had, you know, the two-bedroom as ownership. And the developer identified that at 19 units, which is permitted by the zoning, just at market rate, you couldn't make the deal work. And if you went to an affordable product at that, makes it even less able for him to make it. So that again goes back to what we think should be developed there. So like I said, they've got some work to do, and we'll see what they come up with. The architecture overall, facing the creek and Main Street, was well received, but they did provide an updated rendering packet, which will be shared with you via email. The back side of it leaves a lot to be desired, and the garage parking, as the planning consultant noted, looked like a storage unit, even though it was brick. So there's some things to work out. And that's all that I have, unless you've got something else to ask me.
That is not in the DDA, correct?
No, it's not.
And I forgot, but is Victoria Commons not in the DDA either?
I'm sorry?
No.
Victoria Commons is not in the DDA either.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Do we have any further questions for Michelle? Okay, we will drop down to the city manager report. Courtney, you ready, please?
So, let's see, one thing that was the industrial park signage, so I sent out the quotes, and I did hear back just from one company, which was Signs in One Day, who had used before, and they provided I had provided those 3 sign options and just asked everyone to give a cost. And we paid around the same price for the Lions Park sign as the quote from Signs in One Day, so I feel like the prices are probably fairly correct. I didn't know if council had any opinion or any thoughts on that. I'd like to try to figure out what we're gonna put there, since right now there's nothing. You know, the last one I think is really nice. Maybe if we shrunk the size a little bit. I mean, 8 by 10 is pretty big. You know, if we maybe made it 6 by 6 or something. It's a very challenging utility area where it has to go. We're putting it into a very specific spot on the Daphne side. The colors are completely not
So you might go-
anything to do with
You kind of do
anything.
everything with green. and-
Yeah, the colors, don't look at the colors. It's
Okay.
just the concept of the sign,
Okay.
or the actual layout of the sign.
Uh-huh.
These were, so I used our Lions Park sign, a Business and Research Park sign is the middle one, and then the bottom was actually Milford's entryway signage
Mhm.
that I passed when I go to my brother's.
Mhm.
But I wanted to keep it in the whole brick, stone
Sure.
sort of family of signage that we have.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I don't know if anybody got any.
Will there be a need to have any type of barriers to protect the sign?
It's gonna be on the Dapco side in the right of way. I didn't include the map, but it should be okay where it is. It would be very difficult, especially now that it's more expanded. So it's not gonna be in the center or anything, so I don't.
That's what,
Yeah, no, it'll be on the Dapco side. Sorry, I didn't include that map, but it'll be on the Dapco side in the right of way behind the, sidewalk, so.
okay, thank you.
Or,
Yeah, I was concerned, to me, with the red there,
Yeah,
more like
that-
an emergency department or something.
Yeah, no, the color was not, I didn't get into that. I was going more for
Yeah.
shape.
I think your department's the right tree, if you want to shrink that one down.
Which one,
Yeah, because I mean, that's like a pretty
Third one.
prominent location.
Courtney's recommendation would be to take the last one and shrink it, and I think.
Yeah, maybe.
Make it more affordable. I think that would be good.
Did you say there was some type of plaque from the?
Yeah, so that, he put it in each of them. It's that gray,
Yeah,
that's the plaque. So he had the dimensions of that, and he actually put it on each of them, because
Oh,
I
yeah,
asked
I
him to
see.
come up with where he would put
yeah. The
it.
top one was hard to see.
Yeah, it's on the right there, and
Okay.
then in the last one is kind of in the middle, and then I added the established, because I thought that would be kind of nice to have. That wasn't on the old sign. Paul Bishop did call to make sure we saved the plaque. Yeah, Paul Bishop called to make sure I saved the plaque, so I
I'm
wanted to
surprised
make
Louis
sure.
didn't call, because Louis the one who really got behind that when he did it. He
I
said,
wanted to make sure it was
yeah.
there.
Yeah, I love that.
Courtney, maybe you said this, what's the maximum size of the sign? For our ordinance, right?
I'm not sure, I didn't really look at it as far as the ordinance, I don't,
Oh,
we don't, I mean, this isn't very large, I don't,
I'm not saying
Is
it's
this
too
an
big or
entryway
small, I just
sign?
want to
Yeah,
make sure that we're not jumping
Yeah,
over
I
something we
didn't-
shouldn't jump over, so I'm just
that's
throwing
why
it
I
out
was
there
thinking
for.
it'd be smaller, but it's,
Zach,
I
what do you
don't,
say? Spaghetti on the wall?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what category it would.
Worst comes to worst, we could put a gazebo and put signage on that, right? 'Cause it's a gazebo.
Oh, another
sign.
one, yeah. Good. Good idea, Zach.
If any, I mean, we can obviously look into the size, but not an issue, but if people are kind of comfortable with that concept.
Yeah, I think size-wise, the middle one kind of.
If anybody
I like
has.
those lamps on there.
And again, yeah, and that was the other company, that was the other city's logo, so.
Right.
You can knock that little nub off the top and.
Right, just round it over, yeah. So we'll continue to work on those. Justin has the setup back here with the tablets, so if you can pick which one and sign up for it, that would be helpful. Goal would be to have people have a tablet, and then if not, perhaps pick up your packet, so that I wouldn't have to deliver them anymore, preferably.
I love the individual motivation.
Exactly. So there's sign-up sheets there, and you can try them out. On the next agenda will be the renewal for our Middle Huron partnership with the Watershed Council. We received that. So that will be something the council will see at the next meeting, which is a very worthwhile partnership that is worth every penny, and even the increased amount of pennies that it will cost upon renewal. We did get our trust fund scoring back, and we increased the scoring from 250 to 310. So we were hoping to get above 300 to be in the fundable range. So Justin had provided additional information, and that got us an extra 60 points, which was very helpful. So hopefully that will get us the funding that we need for the grant. And then hopefully we hear about connecting communities, I think sometime in November. So that would be good. We're going to talk about having a joint DDA council closed session before the next council meeting to discuss Wellness Center Tax Tribunal. we thought just having Scott come in and meet with both boards at the same time, and we're gonna check with DDA to see how many of them would be available. Might be easier than him having to kind of go through it twice, because he was at a point where he wanted to have a conversation with council on some strategy anyway. So that's a possibility depending on if DDA is available. We didn't want to make DDA wait till the end of the meeting, obviously, so we were thinking we'd have it before. And then the only other thing I had was just organizational matters, if that's something we're going to do anytime soon, or just kind of go on until after the first of the year.
Questions for Clayton?
What's your thoughts about the organizational process?
I'd like to do it in right after Thanksgiving that week or first week of December if we could find a date. Probably won't take us all that long, but we do need to fill our open positions and discuss how to do that, and I think that's important. Maybe I can have, I'm thinking, I don't know, for Wednesday. In the past, Wednesday evenings have worked well for people. I don't know if that still does.
Roughly what date are you talking?
Maybe like the 28th?
So yeah, the 20th would be 2 days after council.
Or it could be the following Wednesday if that works better, something like that. I don't know.
28th is better than getting into December for me.
Well, I know the later it gets, the harder it gets on the Saturdays and all that stuff, so I was just trying
We don't
to.
have to stay on the
I
28th.
think that Wednesday, yes, I mean,
Yeah, darn.
one in December, but not November.
The one in December you do, but not in November. So maybe we shoot for the 28th.
We'll shoot a few dates out on a doodle poll and let everybody get back. That sound okay? Okay, to jump to my report, I'm not going to go through all of this. This has been one of the busiest 3 weeks of record for me relative to this position, and wanted to just take the time. First of all, I thought the election went very well. We had a very, very good turnout, very, very high percentage for a midterm election. Kudos, Dustin, to you and the team there. So I wanted to say that. Want to just touch on the website committee. We did have our kickoff meeting. We are redesigning our website. We chose a vendor, and we have to now choose a designer. I think those are due, remind me, Dustin, by
Friday.
By Friday. Okay, so not only do you choose the vendor, but they offer you then the choice of the designer. So I haven't looked at that at all, but that's due on Friday.
You're going to be pleased. Not a nice choice.
Good. I hope it's, no matter which one we choose, it works out well.
Yeah, I think that's about what it'll be.
I wanted to mention a meeting that we had last Thursday with Sheriff Clayton at the city offices. He called up and had his administrative secretary call up earlier in the week, and he came out and he's interested now that the what's it called? The
mental health.
The mental health millage has been out for a year, and they have some funding. They're trying to work on the programming for the mental health opportunities here in Washtenaw County, and he's looking to have a public meeting here in Dexter. Wanted to know if we would be willing to attend that meeting, not necessarily lead the meeting, but just be there to support him. He's going to contact the schools and the other units of government that surround us to have a talk, make it an opportunity to invite people in to learn what's going on, the types of things they're doing. So Courtney and I told him that I would certainly support that and share that with you. The date has not been set for that, but I anticipate that'll be sometime after the first of the year. He's working towards setting that up. While he was here, I took the opportunity to inform him of the crosswalk topic that has been floated around on various social media sites, and we all received an email from Amy Smith, at least one, maybe two. She attended the master planning meeting on the 29th of October there. We have I don't know if it's a growing perception or a perception that certain crosswalks in the city are not safe. The school is pushing that perception They want their kids, or they want our kids to be able to walk to school safely, which, you know, is a goal we share as well. But they've been proposing and working on a study that draws the conclusion that there should be rapid flashing beacons at 4 locations in town. One on Baker Road where the crossing island is, one at Kensington and Dexter Ann Arbor Road, and then 2 on Dan Hoy. I think you're all familiar with this issue, at least in concept. So I asked Sheriff Clayton if he would observe these intersections and have his officers observe them a little bit to see what they see in terms of pedestrian patterns, vehicle patterns, and then to think about enforcement. You know, to most drivers, green means go, and red means stop, and yellow means something different if you witness driver behavior around most communities. And the rapid flashing beacons are yellow. To some, yellow means go. To some, it means slow down. To some, they freeze. I'm not sure what.
Hurry.
Yeah, right. Well, all I'm throwing out there is that there's a lot to think about in this decision, and I thought it made sense to get Sheriff Clayton and his team aware of what's being talked about, because I asked him, I said, what would you do if somebody drove through the rapid flashing beacon on Shield Road and you saw it flat, you saw it still flashing and somebody drove through it? Would you give them a ticket? And he said, well, we'd probably pull them over. Now, it certainly depends on the situation. It depends on whether there's a kid there or anybody there, a person there, right? Versus if it was the end of a cycle and the person was long crossed or long past. But he was unsure whether it was ticketable or not ticketable. And so I'm not sure what direction we're all heading, but it is an open topic that I think will continue to get discussed. We are going to have a rapid flashing beacon in our community on Baker Road that is being installed as part of the Grandview Commons site, and we better all be on the same page with how to use it and try to get our drivers educated that when they see that going off, they need to stop, or whatever it is our message is going to be, because the kid, when he pushes the button, or the person is going to think they're safe because it's flashing.
That's right.
And if the driver isn't on the same page, we could have the same problem with one as we can have without. And it's almost as though the schools are, in conversations that I've heard them talk, it's almost as though they're looking for a guaranteed solution. And I don't know that there's anybody in this room or on this earth that could promise a guaranteed safety every time, because you can't predict driver behavior and what people are going to do, or whether they're going to run and go back. And
Well, I think kids sometimes run out and go back. There's a lot of different kinds of scenarios that are really hard to prove.
But he was appreciative of understanding the local issue and said that he would try to get the officers, he would work with Sergeant King to have the officers park in close proximity without being right on top of the intersection, to observe at key times what he's seeing, maybe to get a little more information back to us. I mean, I certainly I've crossed at all those locations several times, but I'm certainly not out there all the time watching it either, and I think that some opinions are good. Anyway, I was trying to make him aware of that, wanted to make you all aware of that as well.
They have one in Chelsea at the high school there on Freer Road. And it's, since I go to Chelsea quite often anymore, that's one of the routes that they take. And it's, I was there the other day and it was flashing, but there was nobody around. And I just proceeded through, I slowed down and proceeded through. And I didn't see anybody there at all. And it's open so you can see if there's anybody there. They're not hiding anywhere.
Right.
But I can see where that could be an issue. I'd be interested to see how it all starts to fare out here. Particularly the one on Baker Road right now. There could be 2 on Baker Road.
Yeah, well, the way the crosswalk is configured, it would be 3. You'd have to push a button to get to the island, and then one to get from the island to the other side, or you'd remove the island and you'd go across 3 lanes, which we worked hard with the schools to pick the island as the safer thing because you're only crossing 1 lane of traffic. So I think we have some things to think about, and I still think that Patrick and our engineering team at OHM are trying to figure out how can we make consistent decisions about where we use these, as opposed to just they're all up and with no methodology, so things to think about.
Do we know when the one on Baker will become active?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that the head signals are there, I don't know when the signage is up.
They still have concrete work to do before they're ADA compliant.
Yes.
I don't think they'll be activated until that work is done.
On Plymouth Road, there is one, and
Yeah.
I ran my grandkids to camp on the north side, so I went through there quite a bit this summer, and when those kids hit that button, they go. It's like, I hit the button, I've got the right of way, I go, and that's one of the things I think we should talk about, is how we would not only get on the same page, but instruct kids as to what that really means when you hit the button. So.
That's where that kid was killed.
We gotta watch for is that second one, too.
The second kid?
Yeah, because it's almost like deer crossing, you know, you got the one going, and you're watching that one, and then all of a sudden, here comes another
Well, the
kid.
other thing that was kind of amusing to me, although it's not safe, is say hot dog. Like, I got the right of way, and you guys are all stopped, and be a fool going across. You see that every now and then. So, it's a dilemma as to what the best thing is.
On October 22nd, the date of our last meeting, I believe the school board also had a meeting, and they received a communication from 5 Healthy Towns as a part of their board packet. You can find it online. I received, I didn't know it was in the packet until a few days after, but I received 2 inquiries from local media sources, basically asking, you know, what's the city side of that story? And so I put together an email response, ran it by our attorney, just to make sure I didn't have a fact wrong or whatever, but in layman's terms, to try and tell the story of what's going on relative to a lot of what you see here that was presented. And I sent that off to 2 different folks. And I haven't seen an article that's come up yet, but I will forward you the email I sent. I meant to do that this weekend and did not get to that. But I also think that I'm going to call Michael Wendorf, board chair at the school board, and ask him if he needs anything from us, or if they were confused by what they got from the 5 Healthy Towns, or if they would like something from us. So I'm going to initiate some communication there on our behalf. We can go into a few more details related to that matter in closed session, but I wanted to let each of you know that I did share some public information about the status of where the various tax year cases are. This isn't as simple as 2014 or 15, it's actually 16, 17, and 18. And there's multiple parties, and all of that is public information, so I really just tried to summarize it, but it's so complicated that, anyway, we can try to touch on details, but I haven't talked about all this in the paper forever.
It's not just in the paper, it's in their Connecticut Communities brochure that they sent out, that they had this whole brochure there. And it was interesting that they said, please contact your
City official.
city official. I have never had one person contact me on that issue.
Not in 5 years, buddy.
No. So, and that has been with a couple of comments that I made in the forum session that we had about that issue. And so people should have had an opportunity to do that publicly or privately, and they've never done that maybe one time about that issue.
One last, I guess 2 last things to bring up here tonight. On November 2nd, I called Dale Fisher. Paul, at the last meeting, you asked about where are we relative to Dale Fisher is a local photographer who lives out in Jackson County, flies the helicopter around and takes wonderful photos of the area, and he creates picture books. Scott, for your benefit, he creates picture books of the area. Maybe you're familiar with him and his work. He is trying to put together a Washington County picture book that includes the communities in Washington County. And that book is not scheduled to be printed until August of 2019. He has some some modest support. He wouldn't tell me how much, but from Celine, from Mylan, and I believe from Chelsea was the other one. And he was trying to talk to Manchester, but I didn't quite get a straight answer from him on the phone call. I told him that, and part of, if you recall, part of the deal that he's offering is for all the pictures that he would take of a community, he was inviting us to seek business support for them to be advertised in the book as well, to get a couple of pages. And we don't typically approach our businesses for, money on very many items. And I was talking to Councilmember Fisher about this over the last 3 weeks, and she kindly suggested that maybe this is something we should steer towards the chamber a little bit if they want to do it. But I don't know if I've provided enough detail tonight, and Scott certainly didn't get to see the examples of what he's done before, but I don't know if they're still interested in us participating in this, and you want to follow this path. Should I be contacting the chamber? Do you want me to put this in their court a little bit? Do you think we should lead it? If so, I may need some people's help deciding who we approach if we're going to help fulfill the...
Who gets the profit from this project?
I haven't asked that question. He told me it was going to cost like $95,000 to print the thing. And I think he was looking for, I didn't bring the brochure, I think he was looking for 5 or 6 from us and another 5 or 6 from different
So
businesses.
is this a profit maker for him, or is there some kind of foundation or some kind of charitable organization that would reap the benefits from this in all these communities, or how does that all work?
I can find that out. I didn't ask that question.
Okay. And
My goal in contacting him was to find out, one, had the book already gone to press and did we miss it? Because Paul, you had suggested that the last time that it was going to be printed without us. And it's not ready. That's okay, that's okay. And then, 2, to bring the information back for some guidance on what your thoughts are. I mean, it could be viewed as a promotional idea. Some people might say, nobody uses a coffee book or a coffee table book anymore. I don't know where he is in that.
online for most of it.
Anyway, something to think about. We don't need to decide today, but once the holidays get done, he's going to need to know first quarter of 2019, in fairness to him, whether he should be taking additional shots of our area that would be included in that. And certainly there's a time element in getting the businesses lined up too. So I wanted to just let you know I got in touch with him.
Do you think the chamber would be interested?
I have not yet. The new member, Betsy, executive director, what's on my list of things to do.
For me and see if that's at all in there.
They're having a meeting this week, Wednesday. So, do we have somebody that can go to that?
Well, I think Ray was our chairperson, so we don't have anybody identified. That doesn't mean that somebody else couldn't go. What time is that meeting?
5:30, said payroll call.
Oh, is that still when they do this?
Or you could call too and just ask.
Yeah, I can just
Erica.
ask, I have to call her about the parade anyway, so.
Just kind of run it by.
She's definitely
Just as a suggestion. of
pretty
maybe-
motivated,
Yeah.
so.
I want them to succeed.
Right.
I've cheered for them for years.
Yeah. So, she's pulled off, she actually got, on another note, all the signatures for this parade in like record time of anyone that's ever turned in a form, so.
Great.
That was helpful.
That's really good.
Question from our staff, Justin?
Yeah, and do I recall correctly that we take possession of any pictures that he takes at the conclusion?
We retain, certain number of copies of the book, but also the file, the actual digital file of the photographs would be ours. For our future use.
Right, and I'm thinking if we do participate, it could be useful for the website.
Yeah, it fits in our promotion thing. We didn't budget for it specifically, but it's not an unaffordable item. Even if we had the chamber lead the business part of this, they're still going to look for, Mr. Fisher's still going to look for funding from the city if we're participating, so.
It might be something that's eligible for CCAP funding.
I like the creative thinking. Anyway, it's still open, so.
We could see if we make a marketing plan out of it, go for redevelopment ready funds.
So I'll just,
That snide remark you want to
I'll
say
just,
it loud enough so we all can hear.
we are redevelopment ready. We are participating in the redevelopment ready communities program as an engaged participant for the second time. They have their initial report coming out. I did have a conversation with Michelle. Michelle asked me to communicate once with them as they're preparing the draft report, and we corrected a few things in the report, or asked them to correct. They had stated that they had visited the council meetings in the report when they had looked at our meeting minutes online. They hadn't been here at all. But I was very open with them about our concern that we like our two-stage approval process that goes through planning commission and council. And they want us to change that as part of this. So we either need to get creative over the several years or whatever. We're actively engaged. I felt, I didn't want to mislead them that we were going to just jump and be a one-size-fits-all like a lot of the communities that they're steering in that direction. But anyway, I think we're still trying to get a Norfolk Development Committee meeting together as soon as we hear back from them, right? Is that
Yep, they're
correct?
crunching their numbers right now.
Okay, so please.
After our meeting with the MEDC's CAT team person on the GAP funding program that they have.
So, good or bad, whatever their data is going to show in terms of their pro forma and what they can do, we need to get back and have a public meeting to talk about that so that the last year of effort and engagement in the public continues. So, Michelle, obviously, as soon as you know,
Yep,
you'll reach out to
absolutely.
us. So, does anybody have any questions for me on anything? My last comment is I'm leaving town on Thursday for a little while, and won't be around a lot for the next couple of weeks, so I'll be coming into the next meeting with very little on this next report. Okay, it's going to be one page.
She paid you up for that.
So I'm averaging down with the next one. Thank you for your patience with my report. On to page 3 of the written agenda, reminding you that there are 3 items on the consent agenda for approval.
Approve the 3 items on the consent agenda. Bills and payroll in the amount of $855,102.23. The road closures for the holiday hustle on December 8th and the December 8th Chamber Holiday Parade.
Moved by Ms. Fisher, thank you. Second by Mr. Smith, thank you. All those in favor of approving the 3 items on the consent agenda, including our largest bills and payroll in the recent 5 years, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Paul's out of the room.
Okay, we'll let the record show that that's unanimous with Paul missing. There's no old business today. We have 4 items of new business. The first one is consideration of an authorization for the mayor to sign the notice of rescission related to the restrictive covenant for the Mill Creek Park property.
I'll move that.
Second. Moved by Michelle's and second by Smith. Thank you both.
Yeah, I don't know if
Or Michelle?
anybody, I mean, if you just want to give like a very brief, but I mean, unless anyone has any questions, it's just clean up of
It was a pretty good
getting the,
description of
yeah.
everything.
Yes,
Getting
absolutely, there's enough.
That parcel
It has
was
been.
very far from any restrictive covenant area, so it's just basically cleaning up so that the 150 Jeffers project doesn't have to disclose that to every tenant, every person that goes to buy that condo.
Sorry, Zach.
The point on page 93 with the notice of recession, the second to last paragraph, was it really submitted by the Dexter Village from past? It says that it was that we sent a letter on October 8th, 2018 as the Village of Dexter.
Right, it should have been.
City of Dexter. Can we make that correction without upsetting the DEQ?
Probably.
All right. My motion would be to correct that and authorize.
Okay, great. Other questions or comments about what we're doing? Okay. Ms. Jones? You would call the vote, please?
Bell.
Yes.
Cousins.
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Fisher. Yes. Knight.
Yes.
Keel.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you, motion carries. Appreciate you getting that off your list. New business item L2, consideration of creation of a housing task force.
So moved.
Moved by Smith, thank you.
Second.
Second by Knight, thank you both. If it's appropriate, I'd like to allow Councilmember Michelle that submitted it to have the floor a little bit.
Yeah, well, sure. As has been discussed, it's tough for folks that earn $60,000 to $80,000 to buy a house, so that the young kids, when they graduate college, they can't come back until they've put a lot of years in. And it's tough for folks to downsize, and we know we have a bunch of missing stuff, but we don't know exactly what it is. This is kind of a light version of what other communities have done. Chelsea's had one now for 3 or 4 months. I know Mr. Keogh expressed some concern with how the membership would be appointed. I just did a generic one here, so if we want to change it. I didn't want to put too much stuff on his plate, because I know 13 interviews is a lot, and this would be a bit more, but the idea is for us to figure out exactly what's going on and get some ideas for how we might make it better. And I know we've been discussing it for a while, and so some folks have said, why now? It's, how many projects have we got coming in? We need to have some sort of a policy or direction. If we want to say, as a community, we want you to put a couple of 1-bedrooms in there that you can rent out. We need to have something we can hold up to them and say, this is important for us. So I think it is important to get started sooner rather than later. That's all that I have.
My only concern is the date. Is this enough time? And this is the 12th, and we're asking for applications by the 30th. I'm wondering if it needs to go a little bit farther into December. Because you gotta get the word out.
We got e-blast.
We could put it in the paper a couple times. Between now and then, at least once or twice, probably. It's the 30th.
What's the date of our next meeting?
The 26th.
I mean, in December, after the 30th.
The 10th. So if we wanted it done for that, it would need to be done by the 5th of December.
Or done by the packet.
The 5th of December.
Yeah.
Packet date.
Which would mean interviews would have to be done by then, if someone's interviewing them. That kind of allows a weekend and a couple of days after this, unless they're rolling.
That would be fine. I assume that you might have some people in mind that you're going to encourage to apply, or?
There are a couple of folks who've been betting my ear on it, and I imagine from the interviews you probably came across a couple of other folks who are interested, or might be a good fit for it.
Probably wouldn't be anywhere like 7 hours.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm happy to try and work to get a community. I like the size of it. It doesn't seem too big or too small to me.
Yep.
No, I'm glad you spelled it out.
So
It's a smooth.
I changed the date.
I think we said no deadline of the 5th, I think is what.
Well, but if the deadline, I mean, that's when the packet goes out, so, I mean, you have to keep it the 30th if you want it done by the 5th.
It's 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's over it's
more than 2
weeks.
weeks.
It's a little over 2 weeks. I mean, we can see if we don't feel like
That's
we
okay.
have a good turnout, we can.
Yep. Let's try it.
But now that we're kind of starting from having some people, I mean, maybe some, like Zach said, I mean, maybe some people did mention that interest. So we are starting from a pool of 12 people, potentially too.
And then, you want me to bring forth the 4 at-large members from that list? Is that okay? I'm assuming how we do other committees?
Yep, and I'll throw out the folks who've been contacting me already. You probably know them already, though.
Okay, that'd be great. And then we just need to have our planning commission nominate one to participate?
And then that could be a part of the organizational matters meeting. Should be the 2 council people, right?
Yep.
I think that should be okay.
Thoughts?
I think it's a good idea, but because it involves staff support, undetermined staff support, The only thing I'd ask is that there be some formal plan as to how this task force is going to go about their business, what their goals are, objectives, and then a schedule with maybe interim updates to council. Maybe that's built in and how these things are normally done, but I'm not sure that a task force like this is common. So I think it would just go a long way towards being able to manage the commitment of city resources as well as giving us an understanding of how things are going along the way, rather than just appoint a task force and then talk to them next December is what I'm saying.
And,
Yep. Makes sense.
you know, you don't, if you designate a person to be a chair to, call the meetings and
And the way I've seen this in my mind's eye working is similar to the Charter Commission that did a lot of work quick and hard. And so as opposed to something where it's going to be grinding on staff for years, since we do have another person in the planning staff, I didn't want to get it earlier. There are some things that staff's going to have to do before the meeting rooms are, because they have the numbers for all magical spots in the thing, sending out emails. I guess I would like to hear from staff if they have any concerns about the amount of time it might take or how they might see their engagement.
Like, I think too, I mean, when we did Charter Commission, I mean,
They
they
changed.
elect, right, so they kind of picked a chair that was good, at leading it through, and then they did set, they were gonna meet every week for 2 hours. They were on a different timeline than
we had
this
last
used to
year,
be.
too.
Yeah, so that the meetings, ran pretty smoothly, but you're right, I mean, they did have a very set goal, which was the production of a charter, so I think once they get together and decide what their goals are gonna be, that'll be helpful to figure out, how they're gonna get there, and then we talked about, Michelle participating, and then Mike, just kind of as needed, and depending on what type of work. Mike has experience on a housing commission in Ipsy, so, which is helpful.
And, like for the charter, we had somebody, you were there, keeping track of what.
Yeah,
took
and that would be
place.
what we would have to continue to do. I don't think it really works otherwise.
Right. Okay.
Okay, other comments? Seems like we've got a motion and a support, and we've talked through some things. Is there any further discussion needed?
Would council want me to put the different, I guess this would be a little bit of a different ad because it's something new, so would putting some of the charges that are listed in here so that people know what it is they generally be doing.
Yeah, I think so.
So the council's comfortable with listing these as potential topics and things that they would look into.
Yeah,
So this is a
I
little
do
different
think it's
than.
important that they decide when they're going to meet, and they're going to meet on a regular basis. Because when you wait for that, whoever that chair is, you wait for them to call a meeting, and I've seen some
It needs to be
things here
set,
that it just doesn't go well.
Yeah.
You got it.
No, we gotta set, Wednesday schedule or, every other week, or, we're even doing that with our review of the fire code where it's the third Monday of every month. I mean, it makes it 10 times easier for everybody because
Yeah,
staff can
I
book the
agree.
rooms and, yeah.
Okay, so there's a motion and a support with moderate changes to the membership, just that I'll do some interviewing and bring back recommendations, but anybody's got ideas for participants, please throw them at me. You're going to run it through the application deadline of November 30th?
Yeah. It'll be probably once in the paper and then a couple times in email update.
Okay.
That'll be okay.
Very good. Zach, thanks for your work on that. Ms. Jones, please call the vote.
Fisher? Yes. Michelle?
Yes.
Knight?
Yes.
Cousins?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Bell?
Yes.
Keel?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. New business item L3, discussion of purchase of property for construction of a new fire station. I'm going to ask Mr. Michels to lead this one first, if that's okay, since You drafted this.
All right.
Engineer did work on it.
So first, I'm going to say I'm very nerdy when it comes to writing resolutions. You'll notice there are paragraph numbers up there. I've found that if you have anything more than a couple paragraphs, it's really useful because then everyone can say in this paragraph I want to change, or what does this paragraph mean? Also, by doing them basic programming style by tens, you can insert extra stuff in there. So I try to make it something for folks to document. So my reason for introducing this is it's Mr. Bells, you've been in the city for 16 years, right? If I remember correctly. The city and village has been working on a fire station 4 years before we got here. And our delays are causing it to go up 5 to 10% every year. And my reading of the tea leaves has been that the majority of the council prefers that site after we've done the investigation. There has been interest in making sure that there aren't any other sites, trying to acknowledge that there is no perfect site. If we had a sack of cash with no bottom, well, it's not good to carry cash because it'll fall hit the floor, but that we would have other options available. And to try to summarize that and say why we decided to do this. Now, I understand we do have a new member on council. When I started this endeavor, I had no idea when we would be appointing the open position, so I recognize that there may be some need to get up to speed. And I guess what I will say is a member of council who, after looking around, and I'll say that the MAF site wasn't in my top 3 when I first started thinking about it. My concern is that we're eventually going to have to do something. And right now, we don't seem to have, we're going to decide by this date, or it's very open. And my concern with that is that we have no assurances that that site will remain available. And then we'll have to find the next best option again. And so that's why I put this together. So my request would be that we do have some firm time to reconsider this, and or when we're going to set sail and make it happen, instead of kicking it down the road some more. That's it.
Mr. Smith?
As I started reading through this, one of the things, you covered a lot of territory.
Yes.
And I was struggling to kind of keep track of everything and make sense of, pieces that kind of were related to each other. So I hope you don't mind, but what I did is I went through and took each line and came up with some category headings and put each one so I could put all the similar ones together. So I'd like to pass that out. Should be enough for everybody. So it's taking Zach's words, but putting some category headings so that the things are grouped together. Now, I did make just a few edits.
Yep. And that was my whole intent, is to start a conversation and make it easier for everybody to contribute or change it.
I did miss one, but I caught after I did this on line 120, talking about the chief and the MAV site. MAV site's on Dexter and Harbor Road, not Dexter Road.
Oh, yes, yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Under 40, where it talks about the potential sites, I do not recall, at least not since 2007 until now, any discussion of the Mill Creek Sports Site as a possible location. So in my copy, I lined that part out. And I changed Copeland Administration Building to just Copeland Property. So that people don't get confused that we're trying to put that actual fire station where the administration building is. And that was also on 40 and again on 150. I made those changes. And I believe that's all the changes that were made. And the words that I inserted, I put in italics. The only italics that I did not put in under 390, which is part of the resolved, that was a quote out of the council rules. So I didn't do the italics on that.
There's also another one on 30. It says, whereas the city has been spent, I think this city has spent.
Which number are you on?
Number 30. It says, whereas the city has been spent, or has been spending, or has spent. You do either way you want to, but has been spent doesn't make sense. I just crossed out the word been.
Well, relative to the timeline, correct, or question, Zach, that you threw out in terms of, you know, when and how and that type of thing. The when, I sort of suggested at the last workshop that we had that I thought we were working towards some type of public meeting in the first quarter of 2019. And I still think that our goal is to have those, some type of options list together that we can seek some feedback on. I'm not sure if who should be the author of that list, but, you know, Courtney's taken a shot at it. I had them listed out in my report at one time. We are working towards completion of that list. And the thought was to have a public meeting in January. So from a timing perspective, I was thinking that we were going to do those two things before anybody threw out or authored a resolution like this that sets direction. I understand why it's put together. I understand the concern over losing the site. If I think back to the first time the annexation of the Sloan property was put in front of us, Zach, I think I authored a resolution that was 2 or 3 pages like this too, with a whole bunch of stuff thrown out to see what stuck, if you will, and what people focused on. You know, ultimately, I'm thinking that once we have some public feedback on the comments, that this could be done even more succinctly than what's here. Of course, I don't know that because I don't have the public comment yet. But so my offering back to you is that I was thinking that something like this would be a second quarter, or, you know, depending on when we schedule that meeting, no later than a second quarter 19 type of consideration time.
It's a long time for the property to be on the market.
I'll pledge to push the public meeting into, you know, mid-January or something reasonable, which means it doesn't have to take that long. But
So,
that was my thinking. I'm just providing the answer back to you.
For other members, as I recall, it was $10,000 in earnest money that we had to put up. And how many months was that it got us? 3 months with extensions on there?
I think back originally, we were looking at that like in August, and we were looking to hold until November at least, so.
This was just after the election, so it was
So-
like 3
Well,
months,
it's probably 3 or 4.
90 days or something.
So if we delay any action until the second quarter, which would make sense with setting the budget to support whatever we do, I guess I would like a straw poll of who wants to put that earnest money out there so we can essentially reserve the site. And I would rather not spend $10,000, but we've spent north of that already having evaluations done at various sites this year, if my math is close.
Well, and just a little more food for thought. As Courtney mentioned, we do need to have a closed session on the 26th to talk about the matters related to 5 Healthy Towns and that property on Baker Road. So the next possible workshop.
What else was your second one? I'm sorry.
I said
property on
the
Baker.
property, 5 Healthy Towns and the property on Baker Road.
The one that we're disputing.
Yeah, the same, yes. I was giving the owner and the property.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So I mean, the next workshop date prior to council meeting would be the one on the 10th, or the 10th of December would be our next one to plan for. And, you know, in that interim of whatever it is, 4 weeks from today, you know, we've got a binder to print up for Scott and allow him a chance to come up to speed on some of this.
I would have to abstain from any action right now, because I don't have
Yeah,
that.
I was trying to get Ray's binder back. It looks like I still have
Good
it.
luck.
I'm hoping.
I think it's holding up the table.
You know, I think that date should be the date where, unless anybody has any final ideas, we run with the options we have and put them together now. If somebody comes up with something between now and then, more power to them, but if we close the door on the 10th on options, then we can work to put together a summary of the information we have, and we can get the meeting scheduled.
We were looking to do a newsletter in January, so we could try to use that too. We can send mail to everybody. Potentially. To get the word out about the meeting.
So, I don't know, Zach, I'm trying to help you in what you're framing, or which I think you're trying to frame. It may not be perfect, but that's where my head is on some of this. You know, the wordsmithing, I wasn't gonna try and get into wordsmithing tonight if, you know, I think some of the grammatical corrections are apparent, or could be cleaned up or whatever, in the Dexter Ann Arbor, whatever.
Yeah, this was done quickly.
No, there's no, I'm not being critical of that. That happens whenever you try to put something down. Is everybody okay with that? I mean, that gives people a chance to read it over, think it over, and we do a workshop on the 10th?
Okay.
So this is back on the 10th?
Well, it will be as
some
a discussion, yeah, well, we
variation.
can continue to discuss it, but like I said, I'd like to get through the public meeting before it's formally a consideration. I don't know if that's okay with everybody. Okay. Hearing no objections to that general schedule. Is it okay to move on to the discussion of tap fee? Yeah. Okay, so, all right. Thank you for your work on that, Jack.
Jim.
And Jim, yeah. I'm gonna have to have Jim renumber them so they're in order. It's like, it's the only thing that's harder to find them.
Like I said, I tried not to change the words. I just tried to
It's a lot of work.
similar things together.
It's a lot of work. Thank you, Will. Okay, new business item L4, discussion of tap fee arrangement with Dexter Community Schools. I'll turn this over to you, Courtney.
Yep, so this is just a discussion, it's not a consideration. I imagine the school had this as a consideration item at their meeting today. Just a different payment arrangement for their tap fee. It doesn't have a negative impact on our budget. Fortunately, if we wanted to accept it, because 150 Jopper is paying the entirety of their tap fee unexpectedly upon their preliminary zoning compliance, which was very nice, and ironically the exact same amount that the schools owed us. So, if we wanted to work with them to have this modified arrangement, you know, it's not going to hurt us from a cash flow perspective. Like I said, they are going to consider this at the board level tonight, and so we should know at the next meeting if they adopted it. And then it'll be up to council to decide if you're comfortable, accepting that.
So they've told us that this is what they want, and they're gonna pass it, and then we gotta say yes or no, is that what you're saying?
Basically, yes. Yep. This is how they want to pay it. And
We've already said that they gotta pay it, and so they're gonna pay it, right?
right, the full amount, yeah. And so what Sharon provided, well, you can see it's in the packet, but so they did make an acknowledgement that they were going to pay it. It's just on a modified schedule. So because they had agreed to make the payment was why I released the meter. And then now we just need to agree on how the payments would actually work.
And it doesn't fit our schedule that we've already.
Correct, because normally it's a third, correct.
So, did they explain to us at all, because I couldn't figure out why they couldn't do this as a normal process? They didn't have the money?
Yeah, so I tried to include some of that, but yeah, so they've, sold a certain amount of bond upon the projects that they're doing, and basically they would include it in a future issue in the third year.
When they issue more bond?
Paul, it's not real clear, because when Courtney and I both met with the schools, the number Dr. Timmis threw out that they had budgeted was about $50,000.
Right.
Now we're hearing from a different number that isn't what they had budgeted.
It's correct.
Yes.
Yeah, well, she runs the school. That's what I've heard. I don't know that for sure, but I heard it. She runs the financial parts of the school, and people do what she wants them to do, but that's beside the point. I'm just saying that it seems to me that they said they were gonna plan it, and they knew the rules, that they should follow the rules, but.
The good news in this is that they're committing to pay the entire thing.
And I'm willing to go along.
And I think that if
So I would go
pass
forward
that,
if
they pass that
say to do
tonight,
that, okay.
we hold them to that, and that gets past the argument of whether they pay it or they don't.
We'll get our
It's
money.
looked at
We'll
the
get our money.
financial- It may not be the perfect solution, but it's better than continuing the argument and that type of thing. And we're not holding them up, they have the meter, right, we gave them the meter. By the way, when I put in my second meter, I'd like to get it and only pay 10% and pay the next set. I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing.
How does this for you, Michelle, if we do this for them? What about the next time somebody comes along? Does that put you in a bad spot?
I think there's a difference.
You, as council, always have the ability, because you set this policy. You can change it. You've been very good about that changing on whim. As long as I'm gonna talk like I would for the ZBA, and Scott's gonna understand this because he sat on that board. If you're going to, and I'll use the word deviate from your established policy, you better have a good finding of fact or reason for doing it, not just, well, it seems logical to me, or, in this situation, they're saying this is all we've got, and they're going to pay over the next 2 years. When it comes to that third payment, I don't know if I heard correctly, is that going to be part of another bond issue that they'll do?
Well, they have a sinking fund, so they do different issues so they've sold, I think, 30 million worth, and they still have another 40 to go, so.
So it's not like they got to go for another million?
No, it's all in one lump sum of this, right? But they don't take all 70 million at the same time.
Right.
They sell it in term bonds over, the course of the projects, and so, and they are a governmental entity different than.
Right. So it's effort of cooperation.
Exactly,
Well, and what I see too is the 3 years consistent with what we've done for new commercial development, just how it's put in is a bit different, and we know with how the funding becomes available. But if we're an existing commercial structure, they would have up to 5 years to do it.
Makes sense.
So we're.
That makes sense then. That makes sense.
Let's try to cooperate and make them happy that we're doing something.
Exactly. So this is just a heads up on what's coming our way, and hopefully they passed it at their meeting or pass something close.
Thank you for asking that.
Anything further? Okay, so we're down to council comments. I will start with Mr. Michelle's if you're ready, sir.
Yep. Watts is going to have a meeting on the 28th, We are continuing discussion on the region-wide transportation plan.
Is that Cap Dart?
Cap Dart, sorry. But it's got people from Watts, so
Right.
that's why my brain crossed there. So it's interesting, it's building on the previous one, and the idea is to incorporate concepts of land use. Most folks think transportation is roads and roads, but where you put the people affects the transportation as well. So that's kind of exciting, again, November 28th.
Jack, is that, we talked about organizational matters for the 28th, is that going to make it hard for you?
It would, if you would like to.
We'll throw out on the doodle poll or whatever we use, we'll throw out the day before the 27th. We'll go before and after a little bit on both weeks and figure out what works. So we can get people there.
For staff, I would like for you to communicate with the Holiday Hustle folks to make sure they don't park right downtown for the entirety of their 5K run. Last year, I was in front of the bakery and I saw 3 cars pull right up. They had their bibs on, they went off.
We were just talking about that actually.
And I would just opine that the parade in Dexter tradition ought to be called Holidays, D-A-Z-E, but I'm okay with it as it is. That's it, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Knight?
I just want to welcome Scott to our team, and I'm looking forward to working with you.
Mr. Smith?
I concur.
You don't get to sit next to me, you're planning.
Who knows, you might take my place.
All right.
Promise is promise.
Ms. Jones?
Nothing today.
Ms. Fisher?
Welcome, Scott. You're a good guy to sit by. And that matters to me.
Well, I pride myself on my hygiene.
She's got some rules. You gotta take
Right,
her
yeah.
binder over here, and there's some other things. She'll fill you in as it goes, but.
All right.
I
Mr.
had
Bell?
a
Just keep me in line.
I did have retraining, that's true.
Mr. Bell?
Well, I just want to say thank you all for your support, and I'm looking forward to working with everybody.
Same as everybody else is, I'm looking forward to it.
Very good. We are back around in non-arranged participation. Anybody in the audience would like to speak this evening? Just shaking of the head in the front row, okay. So we have item O, a closed session to discuss potential, or to discuss tax tribunal matters.
Second.
Motion by Fisher, second by Michelle. Thank you both.
Do we want to advertise who we want else to be here?
Yeah,
It's,
really, I mean, it's kind of
all
up to
filled
you
out.
guys, but, I mean, Dan obviously doesn't
City
need to be,
staff.
Marie needs to stay, but everybody else can go.
It goes in the motion, I throw it on.
Marie has to stay. Everyone else is optional.
Okay, so we're at 9:20 to go in. Please.
Smith?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Fisher? Yep. Bell? Knight? Cousins?
Yes.
Keel?
Yes. Yeah, whatever we need, whatever we need.
For what?
You want me to sit
Yeah,
there?
go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, this-
Absolutely.
You got that?
I don't think they're gonna discuss it Thursday. I guess if anyone has a question.
Are we on a 5-minute break?